Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What was your moment of deepest, darkest terror? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When my ex-husband got a gun out of the car, fired a shot at me, got between me and the door so I could not get to our kids, then he held the gun under his chin, then at my heart, fired another shot into the yard, and held the gun back under his chin. All I could see was visions of him blowing his head off right in front of me, and I kept calmly talking to him, trying to get him to think of the children, and to give me the gun. Then he took off in the house, and I heard another shot. I thought he shot one of our children. He ran back outside and held the gun under his chin and then collapsed. I was able to pry the gun out of his hands. The neighbors had already called the cops, and they had an entire SWAT team, complete with dogs, arrive within a minute of me getting the gun away from him. They arrested him. It was all so surreal, like living your worst nightmare. The next day, when I had to go file for a restraining order, I was shaking so bad that the handwriting was really messed up. Then having to testify in court was just nerve-wracking. It only takes a 4-minute incident to ruin the lives of everyone and make them terrified for years. My daughter is still in counseling and still fears her father 3 years later, even though she does not see him. My son was too young to remember, but I remember. I remember all the time. Wonder what caused it. The day following my mother's death, the realization that this time of my life was over, the time when I could go back to live with my mom if things turned to shit, it was gone. That and so many other things. No more calls, no more I love yous, etc. I was 19 years old when it happened, and it definitely was the most terrifying moment of my life. No contact with my father since I was 12. But of all the things, the part that hurt the most out of it, no more phone calls. To realize that no matter what, no matter how long you wait or how many times the phone rings, it'll never be her voice again, asking me how I'm doing, if I've had enough food, telling me that she loves me. Not the paranormal or violent type of terror, but utterly soul-crushing and pure terror for me. My husband had taken our baby out for the day and I was home alone. Obviously, I decided to go for a nap. I woke up gloriously refreshed, but I immediately realized something was wrong. Someone was breathing heavy, was breath right behind me. I was utterly petrified. I went cold and thought that I would never see my baby girl or my husband again. Then it hit me. I had left the baby monitor on downstairs and the walkie-talkie part was on my nightstand. What I was hearing was the dog enthusiastically licking itself. But the moment before I realized what had happened was literally the most frightening 3 or 4 seconds of my life. When I was a teenager, I used to have trouble sleeping. One time I went downstairs to get a drink or something, and I saw a tall guy in a hoodie leaned against our back door and looking inside. It was all glass. I just kind of froze up, didn't really know what to do. This was the shit that you had as an irrational fear. We stared at each other for like 2 seconds. Then I noticed he was reaching for the door handle. Well, good old reliable brother of mine forgot to lock it, so it slid right open. When he could fit through the door, he put his hand in his hoodie pocket and came sprinting at me. All that happened in about 4 to 5 seconds. Thank God he accidentally kicked a wooden chair that was at the family table and fell down. My dog sure heard that and came flying down the stairs like a bat out of hell. We called the police. Turns out he was stalking the neighbor behind us for quite a while, but stopped after robbing a house there and moved on to ours. Creepy shit. We got an alarm system after that. Falling out of a moving vehicle into the middle of an intersection, the back of my head slammed into the pavement and instantly, everything from the neck down went numb. I tried to move my legs but couldn't. Same with my arms. I saw my left arm fly across my face as I hit, but didn't know if it was on top of me, under me, or snapped in half. Worst of all I could do was stare as a car came toward me, lying in the middle of the road. Didn't hit me, but dear God, was that terrifying. In the span of about 3 seconds, I went from completely okay to thinking I was paralyzed to thinking I was going to die. I was 15 and in Florence waiting in line to see Michelangelo's David. I had to use the bathroom, so I walked over to a bar, bought a Coke, and then asked where the bathroom was. I was handed a key and went down a spiral staircase. At the bottom there was 2 light switches. Turned them, walked through the first door and locked it. That's where the sink was. Walked through the next door and locked it. That's where the toilet was. I was buttoning my jeans when the light turned off and I heard some loud banging and the door slamming open. Then the banging was on the second door. I started screaming. The door flew open and someone grabbed me. I'm still screaming. Then the lights turned on and I'm thrown into the wall while 2 men fought. One took off. One took me upstairs and got me water. I couldn't stop shaking. While I was back in college, I had the opportunity to fly out to Kansas City to see a friend for a weekend. We hadn't seen each other in a while and I really needed a break, so I obliged the invitation. I arrived at around 9 p.m. I knew nothing about the city and he didn't have a car or cell phone because of how close his apartment was to campus. He walked to pick me up from the bus station where I got off from the airport. We went back to his apartment. We started the night off talking and drinking. It was a blast. The time went on and it quickly became 3 a.m. We noticed the time just as there came a loud knock on the door. Did someone just knock on the door with a piece of metal? I asked my friend. I think so, but let me go check. Suddenly, and roaring loud, we hear from the door a man calling in a deep and guttural voice, "Candy, free candy." He continued to knock. "Open the door and come out for some free candy." My friend approached the people quietly and peered through. He turned around with color slowly draining from his face. He mouthed the words, "We're gonna die." He slithered to the floor and wormed his way back where I was squatting behind the couch. Together, we made our way to the back of the apartment and hid in a closet. The knocking continued. I asked him what he had seen. He must be at least 6.5 feet tall. He's black-ribbed and completely naked except for a do-rag and has a double-barreled shotgun. His reply carried the emotions of being half amazed and shocked at what he was saying. We shot bricks while waiting for the door to come down in splinters. The knocking continued to get louder and louder. We could feel the pounding from the door in the floor where we were hiding. There was no phone to call for help, no car to run to out the window. We were on the 4th floor with no access to a stairwell. There was nowhere for us to go. After about 15 or so minutes, the knocking stopped. We no longer heard anyone yelling or offering free candy. We waited for another half hour or so before coming out and looking back into the hallway. He was gone. The next morning I went out and rented a car. My friend went and bought a cell phone. We made a police report, but they never followed up on it. A loaded handgun with a silencer on it pressed in my head, held by a man dressed in black with a ski mask in my home late at night. All I could think about at that time was being so glad my wife wasn't home to be involved in this and horrified that my friends were. I was pretty sure my 3 friends and I were about to be murdered. Turns out they didn't shoot me in the head, only the leg, then beat me with a hammer. They did go and find my dog and shoot him 6 times in the head though. 22 shots through a silencer. He lived, after 2 weeks on life support, thank God. Living through the following year was what deep terror nightmares are made of. More details. I woke up one day in high school years ago. I was pretty much a bum and it really took me a lot to pull myself out of the sheets, so I would always try and do things to prolong the actual waking up, i.e. shower with the lights off. So this one day I'm showering with the lights off. I finish up and open the shower door to turn the lights on. I flick it and they don't come on. I think, oh, power's out, as this happened often where I lived. So I open the bathroom door to let some sunlight into the room. No light. At this point, I start really panicking. I throw open all the doors I can, stumbling around in the darkness without being able to see anything. I scream for my mother, who I thought still might be home, but she had gone to work. So I'm in hysterics, crawling up the stairs on all fours, buck-ass naked, because I'm completely blind. I finally get to the telephone to dial 911. I get through 911 and slowly my vision started expanding. A sliver at first, and then eventually I was able to see everything again. Seriously, so terrifying. I've been mugged, used as a drug mule, and been in a minor plane crash, but nothing more terrifying than waking up blind. My wife and I went on our honeymoon in Nassau. We went snorkeling out pretty far. When we reached the edge of the walled-off area, we decided to go back in. We went off in the same direction. I would come up and look where I was going a few times and saw her. After a while, I looked up again and couldn't find her anywhere. I swam back and forth looking, swam to the dock in the middle, and talked to the lifeguard to help me find her. I was terrified and in tears. My new wife, lost in the Bahamas, probably drowned, and I had to go home without her. I made it back to shore, and they finally came over the loudspeaker calling for her. She walked up like nothing was wrong. Wife is obviously a better, faster swimmer than me. Terror is defined by the individual, so whether this was some supernatural entity, or a feeling of existential dread, or physical fear and terror from someone assaulting them. A lot of different examples here of the same outcome, so it's defined by the individual, and who are we to judge, right? So, hope you're all doing well. Lying face down on my bedroom floor in a pool of my own vomit while the burst vein in my brain slowly killed me. I was punching the floor of my bedroom, cognizant of the fact I was dying, hoping anyone in the universe would hear it and come help me before I died. And that's the terror that I relive in a recurring nightmare, the one that makes me wake up screaming. I watched a friend take a fat shot of heroin after having drank almost an entire fifth. He stumbled around for a bit and then sat on his ass and slumped forward. I knew what was going on and I was just calm. I grabbed my phone and tried to sit him up. He fell backwards and made some wheezing groans. His lips were the first thing to turn blue. I was really scared, but I felt like this would happen eventually, so I was kind of prepared. I was on the phone with the ambulance and ran downstairs and propped all the doors open. I ran back up to my friend, who at this point was bluish and purple in the face, as well as lips. His heart was in a regular rhythm at first, and then it stopped. His eyes twinkled a tiny bit when I lifted his lids. I held his face, and was for whatever reason aware of the thick stubble that lined his cold jaw. I was holding him while he died, and the only thing I could think was, this isn't him fighting. There's no internal conscious struggle he has to overcome. He's just a pile of meat, going through all of its fail-safes and losing. I ran downstairs and guided the ambulance to my apartment. When they showed up, one of the EMTs said, "Oh, looks like we got one," which I assume meant dead. But he lived. They brought him back and he had minor brain damage. According to the doctors, if I had waited a minute longer to call, he probably wouldn't have made it, or had been pretty badly damaged mentally. He thanks me for being there for him, and I still am racked with nightmares. You know why? He was scared that shooting up while drunk would be a bad idea, and I told him he'd be fine. I'm a steady person. The more tense a situation is, the more calm and centered I am. However, in the moments leading up to that tension, the adrenaline and the expectation can be almost overwhelming. The very day that I had graduated from the last step of the Naval Nuclear Power Training Pipeline, I was assigned to stand reactor operator watch by myself. I had sat at the panel a dozen times before, but always with someone at my side. I knew my job and I knew it well, but now I had to do it alone. But that's alright. It was just a normal training day. That was no need for concern. Nothing untoward was going to happen. And then, someone came and sat beside me. He was one of the staff instructors. An announcement was made over the 2MC, engineering-wide PA system, that all staff instructors were to take the watch from their students for a period of staff training, advanced drills. In other words, they were going to throw some heavy drills, testing, and simulated accidents at the instructors while the students watch. Only, the guy sitting beside me wasn't a reactor operator instructor. He was an electrical operator and a member of the drill team. He couldn't take over for me. That's when I realized he wasn't there to take over for me. He was there to evaluate me on the drill. I had to do an instructor-level drill. So I think to myself, there's no way they're going to have this be a drill that has anything to do with reactor operator. Not on my first day qualified to even sit in that chair alone. And then he reached out and placed a small fake instrument indicator over one of my regular instrument indicators. It was just a small, see-through plastic gauge with a fake indicator needle. You could still see the proper reading behind it, and he set the needle at a particular level to simulate something for the drill, and I knew this was absolutely going to involve me. I was chewing the inside of my cheek, my hands were clammy, my heart was racing, and my eyes were rapidly flying over the indicators looking for the slightest thing out of whack. All of my senses were tuned to the panel in front of me, and the sounds of the world around me. And then an alarm went off, there was flashing lights, and suddenly everything was in slow motion. The shakes were gone, and I was calm, quick, and sure in every action I took, announcing them as I took them. My flurry of motion as I turned switches and changed settings lasted maybe 5 seconds, and then I sat down and started logging the event. The guy next to me observing me, it was his turn to have a heart attack as he watched me move much more quickly than he had anticipated. If I had done something wrong, he'd have never been able to stop me in time. But I didn't do anything wrong. I nailed it. He leaned over and whispered that was perfect. And if you're ever move that fast on RPCP, Reactor Plant Control Panel, in a drill again, I'll break your arm. I work at a dairy about 40 miles outside of town, and it begun as any other day would. Well, during the day I was servicing a water pump outside of a cow manure holding pit. This was in early January last year, and it was still about 24 degrees Fahrenheit outside. To get supplies, my dad leaves me to do some tinkering. My stupid teenage curiosity gets the best of me and says, "Gee, Matt, you could walk on the seemingly frozen cow manure and be like a sort of cow shit Jesus." So, while my dad is away, I slowly creep out onto the cement blocks anchored to the bottom of the shit pit. First step, so far so good. Second step, crack, crack, plunge. I fell into the freezing cold, but liquid cow poop, and immediately I started panicking and hyperventilating. With only some rebar to hold on to, my hope was fading fast, as I knew I couldn't hold on until my dad got back. I was about 5'10" at the time, and tried feeling around for a bottom to the seemingly bottomless pit. I found it, and I was able to walk along the floor and throw myself across the concrete blocks. My pants almost came off because the liquid cow shit clinging to them was weighing them down so much. I climb up and call my dad, asking if my mother could bring me my clothes. I have a heart arrhythmia, and when I first noticed it and went to my doctor, he directed me to the ER immediately. I felt fine, but apparently my heart condition is usually extremely serious. So when the doctors and nurses in the emergency room first saw it on my EKG, they freaked out and started working quickly to get my heart rate under control. After trying a few injections of different things meant to slow my heart rate, the discussion came up that they might need to use a defibrillator, and it was possible I wouldn't be sedated for it. They brought one into the room, and I said, "No, get that thing away from me." Pure terror. Thankfully, a cardiologist had time by that point to look over my tests and determined my condition wasn't immediately life-threatening, so I was transferred to a room, and eventually they found a medication that worked. My first panic attack, heart pounding, my body wouldn't stop shaking and twitching. I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. I really thought I was going to die, probably by my own hand to make it all stop. It's understandable to be scared when you see a wild animal close to you. If you have a gun to your head, or you know you just messed up and are going to receive a serious injury. But it's even worse when one moment you're perfectly fine, the next your body is practically attacking itself and putting dark, horrible thoughts in your head. You know you'll be fine. Maybe you've had them before, but there's no logic with panic attacks or anxiety. You can only hope and pray that you'll make it out alive. When I had my first bout of sleep paralysis, for those who don't know what it is, here's a Wikipedia article on it, sleep paralysis. So this happened back when I was in medic school and I was extremely sleep deprived. I laid down and what felt like minutes later, but it was actually hours, I woke up. Well, at least my mind did, but my body didn't. I sleep on my side, and I was able to open up my eyes. I remember staring down my left arm, and that was laying head on. I kept thinking, why can't I move my arm? I soon started to panic. I remember hearing the TV, which was on Adult Swim at the time, and hearing Family Guy in the background. The minute that I started to panic, the distinct sound of Family Guy started to get distorted, and it turned to loud static. I remember trying to scream at this point, but I couldn't. I knew for sure that I was awake, and that what I was seeing was my actual arm. I've had lucid dreams before where I knew I wasn't really awake, but this was different. Then the real terror came. You know how if you're laying on a bed and someone else gets on the bed, you can feel it indirectly? Like they're not touching you, but you feel the effect of them getting on the bed. Well, that's what I felt down at the bottom of my bed. It felt like something big just got on my bed. To make it worse, it felt like it was walking up the bed closer to me. It never actually touched me, but I could feel the indents of it on the bed near my feet, torso, and then my head. By the end of it, I just had this feeling that something big and evil was hovering right above my face, and I swear I could feel it breathing on me. At this point, I'm having a full-on panic attack, and all I can focus on is moving my arm. Every fiber of me was telling it to move until it finally twitched. When it twitched, I slowly started regaining control of it, and the TV, in an instant, went from static back to Family Guy. When I realized that my eyes really were open throughout the whole experience, I really started to get scared. I went downstairs and started doing research, and that is when I came across sleep paralysis. This made me feel a little better, knowing that it was a common phenomenon. The one thing that still baffles me to this day, though, is the fact that so many people experience an evil presence type phenomenon. I mean, so much so that if you Google sleep paralysis, one of the suggestions that comes up is sleep paralysis demon. I mean, I think they even named the damn thing. I get that it's your brain playing tricks on you when your body still thinks you're asleep, but why is it almost always something evil? I rarely have bad dreams, but in the few times that sleep paralysis has happened to me, I always feel that evil presence, just like many others. Why can't it be a positive experience with a hot naked Jessica Alba climbing on my bed instead, damn it? This is kind of mild compared to some of the other things on here, but here's mine. My best friend, her husband, my sister, and I had gone out and gotten pretty incredibly wasted one night. Definitely not our best out of the ordinary for us. We got a cab back to my best friend's house, and my sister and I stayed in their guest room that night, which is right across the hall from their bedroom. It was about 7:30 a.m. when I was awakened by my best friend's husband screaming my best friend's name. I could hear the terror in his voice, and I laid in bed for a split second thinking, okay, T. Marie 32, this is it. She's dead, and you're going to have to go in there and help her husband get everything in order. You're an adult now, go. I heard him scream, guys, help, as I was getting out of bed. I walked into their room expecting to see my best friend dead on their bed in a pool of vomit, in the style of Jane from Breaking Bad. What I saw instead was my best friend happily strolling out of their master bathroom saying, guys, I'm okay, I was just pooping. Apparently, she had fainted while she was on the toilet and went white and shaky for a minute, and it scared the shit out of her husband and he thought she was dead. She woke up and ended up being fine. She got checked out and she's perfectly healthy. So it was just a weird freak situation, but my God, it was terrifying for me, and I can only imagine how her husband felt in that moment. Mine was the day my daughter went missing. She was only 7 at the time. My husband was in Berlin and I was at work while her brother babysat that night. An hour into my shift, I got a call from my stepson telling me he couldn't find her. I stayed as calm as I could and asked him if he'd called the police. He said he hadn't because she'd gone missing with her friend, and her friend's mom wouldn't let him because she was afraid of what social services would do. I ordered him to phone the police no matter what the other mom said, slammed down the phone, and with a hurried explanation to my supervisor, ran out of work. They were the longest, most terrifying 3 hours of my life. Myself, my stepson, the police, and my mother wandered the streets calling for my daughter and her friend, and as time passed, I was so scared that I wouldn't see my baby girl again and kicking myself for daring to leave her to go to work. The other mom was useless. She was just hysterical in a heap. wailing about how social services were going to take her kid instead of going out searching. Out of nowhere, my daughter and her best friend popped up, walking down the street hand in hand. They decided to go and visit the friend's friends who had said hello in the street when they were playing in my garden and hadn't realized we'd be so upset, and came home as soon as my daughter heard us calling for her. The overwhelming relief as my heart found its beat again was indescribable. I've never held on so tight to her or cried so hard as I did that night, and never again did I get someone else to watch her.